Wanuri, I've heard you talk about the importance of hopefulness. So I want to ask, what does hope mean to you?
Hope is a big word for me. Sometimes I find it even more difficult to say than love. Hope is the light at the end of the tunnel. It's the work of building utopias. You can't build utopias without hope. And the belief that utopias are not only possible, but in progress is radical hope.
We are way too quick to assume that the worst case scenario is possible, even when it's a little far-fetched, but we're not so willing to dream about improbable victories and saving graces. How does your sense of hope show up in your work, and how do you feel like hope relates to imagination?
Oh my gosh, hope completely informs my imagination. Even when the spark of imagination is something that upsets me. In Pumzi, it was climate change. In a script I'm writing right now, it's patriarchy. But my work is in service to create an alternate, hopeful perspective.
Yes.
My short film Pumzi was inspired by my absolute dislike for bottled water. To imagine that something that is created freely in nature like water has now become a commodity really irks me. So I started to create a world where water was more than a commodity, it was a rarity. And then I started to investigate what kind of world that would be, and Pumzi emerged.
I think that we can transform anger and feelings of helplessness into hope by taking the things that piss us off and imagining how they could be better, even if it's not realistic. You know, also, just even talking about a terrible dystopian outcome is kind of hopeful because now we're naming the problem, and that means we can start to take steps to address it.
Hope for me is the ability to use our imagination for good. To imagine spaces without bigotry, racism, classism, sexism, or transphobia. To imagine individuals who can live these ideals. In my film Rafiki, we created a beautiful relationship between two young women based in a country that still outlaws same-sex relations. And the ability to create that joy and that love, especially here in Kenya, allows us a different perspective on who falls in love. We made Rafiki to honor the joy, love, and hope that I have felt and continue to feel in my life. So creating hopeful characters, I find, creates hopeful worlds. We root for the people who forge ahead, hopefully and resilient, who move towards hope more than their own safety. It also allows us to make way for those to come, who will have a natural ability to be radically hopeful.
You know, I think romance is actually a very hopeful genre, and a love story can help us to believe in a better future just by showing people connecting with each other in spite of obstacles. A huge theme in my work is that we save the world by learning to understand each other and developing more empathy for each other. For example, my story, The Bookstore at the End of America, ends with people who have opposing political views finding peace for one night by talking about a story that they all love. It's not gonna last, but it does last for one night. At the same time, it's hard to feel hopeful all the time, especially in the middle of a pandemic and with the world feeling so messed up and divided. How do you create hope in your own life? What do you do when you're feeling hopeless?
I create hope by watching and reading about people who work in transforming the world around them, like you, Charlie Jane. I also find hope in unusual spaces, in small yet epic ways, like finding love on a reality TV show, even though I'm not sure it's going to last.
Oh no, man.
Also, When I feel hopeless, I like to go to the ocean and immerse myself in it. And in those moments afloat, I realize just how tiny I am and how great this world is. And just being a small part of it is enough. And that's where I find my hope. What about you?
I get a lot of hope from writing about human connection and showing how people and societies can change. You know, one of the great things about stories is that they can show change happening in real time that might be too slow or too random to see in real life. I also try to remind myself that if nothing in the world makes any sense, that means anything is possible, including some amazing, wonderful, positive changes. How do we put all of this into practice?
There's an exercise I would suggest that will help us practice hopefulness and imagine wonderful changes. Shall we try it?